Hello internet, and today's video is going to be another book disappointment. This is a book where I just didn't like. I was disappointed. I usually do book rants or book disappointments. Book rants are usually saved for books that, for whatever reason, I actually do like those books. Like my book rants usually tend to be like the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy or like Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy or something, which are actually books that I do like, but for whatever reason just like infuriated me. Book disappointments tend to be more books that I thought I would love for whatever reason, but just don't and think it's garbage. And I'm like really curious as to why people keep like mentioning this with praise, because I just do not understand. Like I see nothing in this book that is like decent. Like the promise it had is like barely there. So today's book is going to be the second in a series. This is the second book, the Windwitch book by Susan Jenner, which is in her Truthwitch series. I don't know how long it is. I don't know what it is. This book follows one of the characters that was introduced in the first book, and he is now going to be a person of interest, a POV, and we are going to see from his point of view. It is going to be the Windwitch. Of course, we still get Truthwitch's point of view and the Threadwitch's point of view, and their stories, but we're going to be mainly focusing on this one guy and his life story. So this follows the Windwitch, and he goes back to his kingdom, and he is like a prince, and he has to deal with his sister, who is actually the heir. Now there's this huge thing with this magic system where certain magic users are more powerful than others. It depends on what they are called. So he is a Windwitch, which means he is a lesser air witch. He does not have as great as power. I do not know what his capabilities differ from Wind witches to air witches. There's no real explanation of that, because he seems pretty powerful and he seems capable of doing the same things that his air witch friend can do. So I'm not really quite sure what the power difference is, but apparently there is one, and he's weaker, and that is why he is not the heir or really well loved by his father and was kind of cast out. It's because he has weaker magic. Also, his sister is a water witch. Now there's a difference between a water witch and a tide witch, and she is a water witch, which means she is more powerful than him because she's closer to like the base power, even though they have completely different abilities, one dealing with water and one dealing with wind, because she is like of a higher power in water. Because she is a water witch, she's more powerful and therefore more worthy. I think this is supposed to be like, once again, this author compared her series to Avatar: The Last Airbender, so I'm gonna make that comparison because you blew that up in your face. You shot yourself in the eye, so now I get to complain because apparently like it's not even half as good. Now I'm not trying to make a one-to-one comparison, okay? I do find that that is dangerous. I am not saying that she said that her book is Avatar: The Last Airbender or is just as good or is the same thing. I am simply pointing out the fact that if you're going to compare yourself to the work of art that is Avatar: The Last Airbender, you should have decent world building and a good magical system and great character development. Like just basic decency stuff. It doesn't have to be the same. I'm just saying it should have all those things that Avatar: The Last Airbender. Great character development, a good magic system explanation, and good world building. None of which are present in Susan Dennard's books, at least not to the extent that they are in Avatar: The Last Airbender, or even close. Not even to like Legend of Korra standards, okay? So like, no thank you. But if I'm trying to like see what she was going for, I think she was trying to say the Wind Witch and the Water Witch are kind of a Zuko and a Azula relationship. Now, if you're going to make a Zuko and Azula relationship, if you're familiar with the show, they are antagonistic. They are siblings, but they do not like each other in the least bit. There are a few episodes and scenes where they are nicer to each other, where they act like siblings, but they are enemies. They are rivals. They do not get along. With this, I felt like the Wind Witch and the Water Witch would have been great friends, great siblings, and like great together with bringing their country on a rise if they talk to each other. Like if they simply talk to each other, then they would have been great. Like the Water Witch holds resentment to the Wind Witch because their mother died, and for some reason it's somehow the Wind Witch's fault. And then the Wind Witch doesn't like the Water Witch because she's just kind of mean to him. Like she's a mean older sibling. And like literally their problems are like so easy to solve if they simply talked to each other and communicated with each other. They would get on fabulously, or at least well enough that they could have an alliance to ensure that no destruction comes to their kingdom, which is one of the main things of that plot point, is that they're really worried about what's happening to their kingdom. They want to make sure it gets better. They want to make sure it prospers. So that's what they're trying to do. And they both have the exact same goal. They both have really good plans. They simply are arrogant and refuse to talk to each other. They both have great plans and they both have bad plans. And when each one is pointing out what the good plans are of the next and what the bad plans are of the next, they both refuse to listen to each other and work together simply because of simple pettiness. I don't feel like that's what was going on with Zuko and Azula, so I don't like it. I can't make that comparison justified, because I feel like Zuko and Azula were so complex that it would be nearly impossible for them to have a good sibling bond, and for them to be like in a relationship with each other in any way. I think they could both be decent enough people and they both could really care, but they could not be together. Like, they would be horrible for each other, right? They could not have that relationship. And it's not just, oh, we can talk. They have moral and ethical differences. For these two, I feel like if they just communicated with each other and talked to each other and stopped pretending like the other was some sort of villain, that they could figure out a way to help their country. So therefore, I had no like for either of these characters when it came to their relationship with each other, because if they had just talked to each other, they would be fine. And that was the big issue I had. If you had just talked to each other, you would be fine. Now, I understand it's difficult to talk to people, but I do not like when, like, literally all your problems could be solved if you just spoke. Because otherwise, stop fucking complaining about having problems, because there is a simple solution. You can choose not to talk. I'm not saying anything about that. But the amount that these two complain about each other, and the easy solution is just to talk and listen, I don't have time for that. So, was not a fan. Then, for the Truth Witch part, we once again see the lame fucking powers that she has this whole fucking time. Like, again, her Truth Witch abilities do not actually let her distinguish whether or not someone is telling the truth, but only whether or not they believe they're telling the truth. So there's a lot of instances in this book where people are actually, like, lying to her, but they believe it to be the truth. So, like, she can't really tell. So it's, like, the lamest superpower in the world, and, like, literally someone else deduces the same exact thing she does without her telling them, because they can freaking tell when somebody's lying or not, or when something sounds suspicious or not. So yeah, her powers are fucking lame. Then there is the Thread Witch. I do like her character. I still do not understand why people hate on Thread Witches, especially when they use Thread Witch magic complementary, like saying Thread Brother or Thread Sister and Thread Family and stuff, but for some reason hate this girl's family and her people. But we do get to see more about, like, Thread Witches and, like, this sort of, I don't know, little branch off of Thread Witches that are Thread Witches, where she has a few more abilities that, well, there's a villain in here that's, like, a Thread Witch villain, who has, like, different sort of Thread Witch powers, and she's not distinguishable as a villain. Like, she's not really, but she is somehow connected to our Thread Witch because they have the same abilities. But, like, I forgot she even existed. Like, that's how much of a non-entity this evil Thread Witch was that I was like, oh yeah, there was that plot point. Like, that's how ridiculously stupid that was. And I like villains. So, like, if you make a villain that is just, like, so unmemorable, that's saying something, okay? But there's some sort of distinguishable difference, which again has me confused, okay? Has me confused. Because from what I have inferred from this magic system is that if your witch powers is named after the element that you use. So if you are a water witch or an air witch or a thread witch, you're super, super powerful and you can do super, super powerful things. However, if you are a lesser, like an air witch or a tide witch, then you do not have the same power set or capabilities of the others, of the air witch or the wind or the water witch, right? But for thread witches, for some reason it's different. Like, it's hinted at that this off branch of thread powers that our thread witch has, and then that this other one, I think they're called weaver witches, they are more powerful than thread witches, which doesn't make sense because it's thread magic, not weaver magic, unless in the past it was in reality actually weaver magic, and thread magic is an off branch of weaver magic. But that is not explained. I'm just guessing. So I'm just wondering why weaver witches seem to be more powerful than thread witches, even though thread witches are named after the source of their power, like air witches. So what is the distinction? Once again, that made no fucking sense. I'm sorry if you didn't understand me, but I don't understand what the power difference is between these people, other than the fact they keep telling me it's one. And with air witches and wind witches, okay, it kind of makes sense. And with like water witches and tide witches, okay, again, like I guess, like I can kind of see where you're going there. But what is the difference between a thread witch and a weaver witch? And why does a weaver witch seem more powerful than a thread witch, even though weaver witchery is a branch off of thread witchery and therefore should be less powerful than thread witchery, not more powerful, given what we know about how the other elements in this work? I don't know. Doesn't make sense. So my brain doesn't, like, it. I've been thinking about this. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I should not have to infer and guess this much when it comes to your book. You should be telling me and showing me, not me guessing and fucking wondering. I should not be filling in everything here. Like, I feel like it's like, okay, like, you know those sheets that you were given in like school where it was like a story and then there were a lot of blanks and it was like choose an adjective and choose a noun and stuff like that, and you then had to write in all of those things so that you can make a complete story? I feel like that's how the series is like Susan Dennard wrote a book, but she left a lot of blanks, and it's up to the reader to fill in those blanks with whatever words, nouns, adjectives, and adverbs the reader so desires. It's super frustrating. Another thing, just like a little offshoot thing, I think is the last thing I'm going to mention right now for this book, is that the Windwitch has a character that he meets that is a transgender character. It is a person who was born female but prefers male pronouns, and it thinks of themselves as a boy, so he is a boy. Now, the Windwitch knows visually that the person is a girl. I mean, like, sex-wise, right? It's still sex-wise, even though their gender is boy. Sex-wise, visually, they seem to be a girl, or at least were born female, right? So, there's this part where the Windwitch just figures that it is a female, also gender-wise, but that she prefers to have male pronouns because she is trying to protect herself, right? Because it's safer for girls to dress as boys and to act as boys. And then later we find out that no, in reality, it is that this is a boy and that happened to be born in a feminine body. And so when the Windwitch is like, oh, I knew you were a girl all along, I was just telling you and using male pronouns because it seemed like you wanted to dress and act like a boy. And then the boy's like, no, I'm a boy. I thought you understood this. I thought that's why you kept calling me this. I thought like you understood and you recognized this, and I really loved you and worshipped you because you finally saw me as who I am. And the Windwitch was like, oh, that's garbage. Oh, like, you're obviously a female, you don't have to lie. And then the little boy's feelings are so fucking hurt, and the Windwitch is like completely ignorant the whole time. Like, the little boy is explaining like, hey, I am a boy, like, I'm sorry, like, my appearance looks sort of like this, I can't help that, I am actually a boy, I'm a boy, and keeps trying to tell the Windwitch, and the Windwitch is just kind of like, okay, whatever, ha ha. Like, he was rude ass to this little boy. it was an honest mistake, okay? I can get, okay, he honestly just thought it was a girl who was dressed as a boy for her own protection. But once the little boy corrects you and tells you differently and says, oh, you just hurt my feelings, I thought you understood, this is what the reality is, the response isn't to be like nonchalant, to be like, oh, okay, well, live your life, haha. Like, you made a mistake, apologize, and treat this person like a boy because they are a boy, okay? But yeah, that kind of pissed me off, okay? Like, no lie, I did not like how that was handled. I did not think it was handled well. I don't think it was the most offensive way for the situation to go down, but like, that stuck with me. Like, I read this book a while ago, and that scene just really stuck with me. I did not like how he responded to this boy when this boy was like, yeah, I am in fact a boy. I am a boy. I'm a boy. And like how he responded to this kid. And I didn't like that. So, other than like the glaring issues that have just existed with this whole series of the world building, the character building, the magic system, the relationships between characters being pathetic, the fact that the female friendship is absolute garbage and they don't even stay together. The only friendship we ever hear about is like when they're like, oh, I miss my friend, I miss my friend, but we don't actually get to see like how they became friends, how they're friends, like what holds their friendship together other than the fact they just cry about missing each other. Yeah, this book was just super disappointing. I don't like it. So if you like this book, good for you. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. I did not enjoy myself. I thought it was garbage. But like, feel free to try to change my mind, or feel free to agree with me. I would much appreciate that. But if you would rather leave a long essay of how I'm wrong, feel free to do that as well. I will read it. I just probably won't agree with you. Other than that, click all the bunny bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.